Welcome to Sutures and Cents, where Tegaderm meets Top Line and Surgiflow meets soft costs. In ambulatory surgery centers and hospital ORs, we talk clinical to business people and business to clinical people. I'm Mark Copeland. He's Ryan Pistone. We are Sutures and Cents. So we found Jay Sanchez so interesting that we broke his interview into two parts, and this is going to be the second part. And I was really excited about it because I wanted him to talk about how he came up with this little innovative surgical light that solves a lot of problems. And he actually describes where specifically. And I was just fascinated by it because I don't know, Ryan, I'm always fascinated by how somebody comes up with an idea and a couple of years later, somebody's using it, particularly in medical device.
I couldn't agree more. And for those of you who are listening, I just want you to know that if you have any background in surgery, you're going to listen to the device and go, "Oh my, I thought of that." I pointed that out. That's
exactly right.
I pointed out to my buddy 3.5 years before he even thought of it. And then what I will say to you is, well, you didn't do it, right? And Jay did it. And it's interesting because Jay thought about it, and then it took 11 years for him to bring it to market because they couldn't figure out how to do it economically, right? They couldn't,
Yep.
And it didn't stop him, which is cool.
Yeah, and we know him, and he's here because I saw him posted on LinkedIn, and I shot him a message and just said, "Hey, man, I've been thinking about something like that for 5 years. I'm so glad somebody came up with it because there's a need." So let's talk to him. Jay Sanchez, the Chief Commercial Growth Strategist and President of Accelerate Medical and co-founder of the SurgiLux disposable surgical light that's democratizing surgical illumination for healthcare. Let's go to the rest of our interview with Jay. Let's pivot to, Jay, what originally attracted me to your product was I saw one of your posts, and I have been in operating rooms for years. So has Ryan. And mine was mostly, 99% of mine was knees and spine. And there are times when we just cannot see. And there are lighted retractors, and there are headlights, and there's ceiling, right? And I've actually looked, I can't tell you how many times I stood in the room going, my God, like, why don't we have something that's small, that's disposable? You flip this little thing and sit it right there, and you don't have to fight this or worry about the head, right? And I saw yours on LinkedIn, and I think that's how you and I got to know each other. I shot you a message, said, "That's right. Hey, man, just want to let you know, like, I've been looking for something like this forever, and I'm so glad somebody invented it because there's a need for it."
Yeah.
And I know if you could talk about the derivation of that product, where it came from, because you guys sort of came from a different background with it.
Yeah.
So could you talk about that?
Yeah. So myself and a couple of partners, we were at the time we were involved in like general surgery, hernia, that kind of whole world. And I remember there was one instance where one of my business partners just happened to be in an open abdominal case at a trauma center here in Southern California. And what he noticed was, despite having the brightest of lights behind the operator, which really created kind of an eclipse. If you think about the exposure being in front of me and the light being here, well, you've got your melon in the way, so you're creating an eclipse. But also with a headlamp and having to contort her body in like these awkward positions that inevitably, probably, this is not good ergonomics for 5 hours, okay? It's not. My business partner had the thought, it's just like, what if there was a way that we could inexpensively and effectively illuminate that area without the acrobatics of this, the sort of the sort of eclipse effect, or having to wear a headlamp. And so right around this time, my wife and I purchased the house that we currently live in, and it was an absolute dump. And so, I like most first time homeowners, I went to Home Depot and I bought a drill set. And my God, it was amazing. When I opened that drill set and I started like practicing with it, I found that when I pressed the trigger, there was a light that came out of it that illuminated the screw head. And oftentimes you need that. You don't notice it when you're in ambient light, but if you're underneath a desk or you're having to unscrew something, oh, man, it's a lifesaver. So this was about 11 years ago, and so we put the idea to paper. We sketched it out, and we were just a couple of reps. Doing our thing, undercapitalized, and so forth. And so it was a very different world. Like there wasn't 3D printing to the extent that there is now, where I could hand the original schematic to my daughter upstairs and she can like 3D print this thing. Something that I bought on Amazon for $30. It's crazy, but at the time it was wildly expensive. So we always held on to this idea that at some point we would bring this thing to fruition. And there were a couple of seminal events that kind of happened along the way too that really pushed us to put resources together, raise money, and get this thing to market. There were a couple of companies that came out with some really elegant lighted dissection tools, very elegant. In fact, they built portfolios around these things. And so, we saw this, and with every new iteration of these lighted dissection products, we're just like, man, it's got to be our time. So, like, we have to take advantage of this.
Yeah, it's funny. They're actually proving the market exists and needs something.
Yes.
Even though I think most people look at something like that and go, oh my gosh, there's competitors. Somebody beat us to it.
Yeah.
No, you can't look at it that way.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, so in many ways, you're right. In many ways, the foundation was already sort of dug and poured for us, because what we noticed is that the cost of these devices, which was already high when it started, when they came to the market, several $100s, $500-$600 per handpiece with a light. You got a box that comes with it. This whole thing, it's like a whole, it's like a whole production. The cost of these devices, as the indications were rising, so were the prices of them. And so we saw an opportunity like, hey, what if we could deliver equivalent, if not better performance as those devices, but at a fraction of the cost? Where the surgeon or the interventional cardiologist or whomever that is accustomed to operating with a 30-cent electrocautery pen that's practically free to the hospitals because they buy it in such huge bulk. It's tied into all these contracts. They have no idea like how much this costs versus a drape. They have no freaking clue. Like, what if we can get something so inexpensive they can slap it on any Bovie? Doesn't matter the design, and it would work just as well, if not better, than these expensive devices. So we sort of traversed that chasm. I would say 2.5 years ago, where we raised money, we brought on partners, and we made a very deliberate decision, guys, to have everything designed and manufactured in the U.S. because we're patriotic people, even though our margins are not what they would be if we had it, manufactured in some third world country. But yeah, I mean, it was amazing. We brought it through regulatory. We found a place to do all the clinical validation, the assembly, sourcing everything. Not a benign process, as I'm sure you can imagine.
No.
But when we finally hit the market, we kind of went to every surgeon, every cutter, everybody that could possibly use a bit more light, and we found that it was so well received across a wide array of disciplines. But there was one in particular. There's one, the one discipline that embraced it the most was cardiac electrophysiology. Cardiac electrophysiology that create pockets in the chest in order to place the pacemaker. And the reason why it's so critical to have a clean dissection there, where the electrocautery provides not just cutting, but also hemostasis. You cut, and then the heat also seals off the vessels. The reason it's so important to have exquisite exposure and hemostasis, bleeding control in the pocket, is because in the presence of an implant, and you know this, you come from orthopedics, in the presence of an implant, if you have serosanguinous fluid, blood that accumulates around it, and you end up having like a hematoma at the surgical site, you can end up with something awful. you can end up with an infection, an explant, which just means a patient has to come back. They go through the ED, their white counts all over, they got fevers. Oh, it's just a disaster. So you have like a $30,000 procedure where we're adding value to ensure that patient's going to have as good an outcome as possible, at least for what the physician can control. So
Yeah.
we found electrophysiology really to be the sweet spot for this, and it seems like we're opening a new hospital, a couple a week all over the country, and it's been a real blessing. It's been a real blessing. Scary.
Well, it's funny. I see you celebrate. I got Jay Sanchez as a connection in LinkedIn, and I got the little bell next to his name lit up because I like what you post.
I appreciate it.
I want to know when you post, right? And one of the things I've noticed is you celebrate your wins, but in a way that I find to be extremely humble and professional, and about the clinic, the clinician, the patient,
the institution. Yeah.
Right. Because, and I know you enough now that I know that's genuinely who you are. But I also like it because it shows other places. Because you and I both know when you bring something new to a place, if they're interested, one of the first things they say, who else uses this?
Wow.
Right?
Exactly.
I mean, and Ryan and I have both done that. We have sold first in state, first in the East Coast, first in man in some cases. And the first thing they ask is, who else is using this? Right? And sometimes it's because they want to be first, but most times it's because they don't want to be first, right? And you have a whole history right there on it. It makes it more comfortable. And as simple as your product is, and I like products like yours that are, when you're driving down the highway,
Yeah,
and you got those little rumble strips built in the side of the road. How many millions of lives, or at least let's say how many millions of accidents have they saved, right? It's one of those things where you're like, well, shoot, I could have thought of that.
saves mine every
You
night.
didn't.
Every night. I'm getting off like, oh, wow, I'm awake now.
Yeah. But like simple fixes like that have dramatic improvements. The question is, so you're getting wins, and that's important because hospital executives see it, GPOs see it as well, right? It brings credibility. What hurdles, what are you running into these days that it's not hurdles? I mean, just you're gaining traction every day.
Yeah.
Right. But what are you running into that if you could get granted one wish, I wish this were easier. Is there something you wish that, like, on your wish list, on the Jay Sanchez SurgiLux wish list?
There's something on the wish list. Man, there's everybody wants an easy button, right? Everybody wants an easy button, but if you hit the easy button and you get this perfect prime rib that shows up and you devour it in 5 minutes, well, that's a whole nother story rather than you put the love and effort into making it into what it is. So, candidly, I feel incredibly blessed, and my business partners share this sentiment. We feel incredibly blessed for all of the wins as well as the challenges, because without challenges, without making some mistakes, and nobody's perfect. I make way more mistakes than I get things right. Just ask my wife or my daughter. With every mistake that we're able to learn from, it makes us better. It makes us better. And, going back to kind of the original, sort of subtopic of social media engagement, which I'm incredibly passionate about. It's, consistency matters. So if you are an entrepreneur like myself, you're a solopreneur, maybe, you're trying to build a brand. You're trying to execute a narrative to add value to, a wide range of people within your sphere and even beyond it. It's important that you are consistent in your engagement and that your narratives are genuine. You have to be genuine. So when you look at one of the last things that I posted with respect to the SurgiLux device, it was about it was in San Diego, beautiful San Diego, California, and it was really to celebrate the foresight of an electrophysiologist who took a risk on a small company, that took a risk on something that wasn't a household name, and she literally championed it into this massive institution with all of this bureaucracy for just a couple simple reasons. One, it's patient safety. Two, it makes her operating experience more satisfying. And three, my goodness, if she's able to demonstrate improvement on those metrics, well, then that's not only going to positively impact her department as a cath lab, it's going to positively impact the entire organization. Which is a massive organization down there in that part of town.
Yeah.
So, in the spirit of trying to tie together, social media engagement and sort of my narrative, the voice that I put into it. Yeah, I take lots of pride in celebrating my operators. I take a lot of pride in celebrating the institutions that were willing to, amid the dozens of new products and junk that's being thrown at the materials and all these, the directors and everybody, every single day, that they chose to go with me, that they placed the trust of their physicians, their patients, with me, with something that I had the privilege to sort of literally scratch out on. I think it was a paper towel,
A cocktail napkin? Was it a cocktail napkin, Jay?
Yeah, cocktail napkin. Right. We can.
I mean, just to, because I don't know you as well as Mark does, right? I have not, I'm going to put a bell up by your name too, because it genuinely, it makes me feel good to hear someone talk about it the way that you're talking about it. And I could tell that you're genuine. I have a pretty good BS meter over here. Like, I can tell you're genuine, that you actually care. And what's funny about it is, like, that's what kills me about Med Device, that if more businesses and more owners and more were like you and took your approach versus like Mark and I will talk the bros that Mark and I have dealt with in like ortho and spine. I don't know if they're in the vascular world, but like, you're welcome for me being here type of, like, that's just not the way you approach it. And what's funny is like, you're succeeding in a world where you're fighting an uphill battle because you're trying to get into these massive, it's not like it's back in the day where you can go talk to a doctor and a doctor's like, if I don't have this in here by this afternoon, I'm going to throw a fit. They literally have to champion and throw their entire weight behind it.
Right.
And it's clear that because the way that you position it and you're passionate about it and you're genuine with what you do, I can completely understand why you're successful. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
It's nice.
Yeah. The other thing too is, if you're consistent about what you put out there and you're very authentic and genuine about the network that you build. So I'll just speak for my own network. I got a couple thousand folks on there, and I've got a lot of very busy doctors, directors of programs and multidisciplinary, physicians that are on there that will regularly like what, they'll like my posts. And that makes me feel really good because, I don't think that there's a more important job in the world than it is to be a doctor. Somebody that's going to take somebody's life to improve their life, to save their life, and for them to take, even a millisecond out of their day to engage with my content and to like it or like reshare it. That's amazing. And so what you find is if you're consistent with your messaging and you're truly genuine and you're impassioned about what you do, I think that shines through. Like here we're talking, so you're getting a dose of like the race fuel that is Jay Sanchez, and I can't help it. It's the way that I am. Listen, I'm a binary individual. People love me or they hate me. That's it. Most of the time, like my wife can't stand me because I'm up here all the time. But yeah,
that's what my kids do all the time. My kids do that.
The way that I am, but what ends up happening is all of these social media posts because consumers today, physicians are consumers, even though they have to ask for their hospital or institution to front the money most of the time. They'll look at social media. They'll do their own research. They want to be informed consumers. They want to be responsible. They want to be fiduciaries of their hospital, if you like. And I've had many conversations with physicians about this. So like fiduciary, well, that's a really good term for that. Comes from my financial background, but what you'll see on my LinkedIn profile is if you look at my history of posts and you look at the narratives, whether it's SurgiLux or it's my closure device or whatever, you will see a consistent message, a consistent, repeatable message that doesn't matter if it's being posted for an operator in a hospital in the Caribbean, in Florida, in Texas, or here in Southern California. it's always the same sort of value proposition. So by the time it gets to the point where a physician is ready to engage with me, I've already got a virtual funnel sort of built, right?
Yeah.
Because every
Yeah.
physician that's on LinkedIn has everybody that they know that are physicians that they work with, they went to fellowship with, they trained with, whatever. And so when they like something of mine or they engage with it, their network gets to sort of participate in that engagement as well, even if it's
Yeah.
passive. And that's okay. And that's okay. Because a lot of what we've had to do early on was straight up cold calling. So, do a little bit of research. Oh, hey, Acme Hospital in Greenwich, Connecticut. I'm calling to speak with Dr. So-and-so, who's an electrophysiologist. I hear he or she is head of the department there. Well, who are you? Well, Dr. So-and-so actually connected with me on LinkedIn. I had the privilege of sharing something about my device, and they mentioned that they were interested. I live in California, so I'd love to come out and visit with you. But before I do that, can we please have a conversation about how the acquisition or purchasing process might look like? Just a little discovery, And
Yeah.
so this has opened up so many doors. This has opened up so many doors, created so many opportunities that, like, I'll tell you, I'll make a bold statement. This thing that I'm on right now, this journey that I'm on, would have been impossible without social media, consistent engagement, and really taking a very earnest and authentic, genuine approach to building the network.
Jay, it's funny. What you just described is something I cannot remember. I'll have to look it up. The podcast I was listening to. And somebody was talking exactly about how social media had helped their business outside of medtech. And they described it as that it's not social media, it's digitally commercializing your business, right?
Getting known,
And
attention. Yeah.
because social media has this perception of it's the Kardashians or it's somebody dancing on TikTok, right?
Sure, yeah.
And but when he said that, I thought, wow, like and I've used that since then. And it's almost like you're describing the same thing. It's just in a different way, but that's exactly what you're doing. And I admire that. We're doing some of the same things as best we can, because I do think, like, for me, the message needs to get out about your product, not because everybody should be buying it for everything.
Correct.
But you can't choose the option you don't know about. And if this helps in a little way, let more people know about your option. Like, I feel good. And like you and I discussed this is not a commercial for your product. I think it's valuable. I think it helps patients. At the end of the day, it helps patients. And that's where you have to start.
I mean, I tell you too, there's so much opportunity. We're all three of us, we're all med tech pros, so like we'll just kind of keep it to med tech. But every time you're in a procedure, so this is maybe good food for thought for our reps out there, sales leaders, marketing, whatever. If you're in a procedure and you identify a pain point and it's pretty consistent with the job that you have, think about how you can solve that problem. And then once you've developed that thought a little bit, maybe take a note. Everybody's got a smartphone. Be smart about taking notes, right? Sort of draft it up and, sort of scour the marketplace and see if there's something that fits that need. I will tell you, having been in the vascular space, like when I worked at a real company and at a real job and, not being crazy like I am now, one thing that I noticed, which is a huge gap in the patient care continuum, was the fact that after any patient gets like an angiogram, like a picture of their heart or any vasculature, they got to lay down for like 4 hours. They cannot move.
Right.
They can't move, regardless if they just hold it manually or they use some kind of device to sort of alleviate that problem. It was pretty consistent. So when I was approached by a company that's based overseas, based in Ireland, in fact, about helping them. So what Accelerate Medical does. Accelerate Medical helps early stage companies kind of go to market. So what we do is we partner with these early stage companies where they're newly FDA cleared. Maybe they've been around for a little while, but haven't really been able to sort of synthesize, crystallize a message, a value proposition that resonates broadly. we partner with those organizations if they're the right fit. And so what I saw in this was an opportunity to help patients instead of laying on their back for 4 hours or 6 hours in some cases, like get up and walk out of the hospital or interventional suite in 30 minutes.
Hmm.
And where this resonates and hits home for me is back in 2013, my wife was diagnosed with connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos. A lot of people are familiar with Marfan syndrome because you get these athletes that'll just the aortas will dissect and they'll just die, right? Young, active people. Well, back in 2013, my wife started having these weird symptoms. And make a short story short, we ended up at a hospital. She had an imaging study done via the groin access, and the doc said, "Hey, listen, we're going to do this in the morning. You'll be home having dinner with your family by the evening." It was an outpatient procedure. Well, it turns out that this hole didn't close because of her, up until that time, undefined sort of disorder. And we ended up staying in the hospital for like 4 days. And then she had a massive hematoma. It's like this big old bruise, a collection of blood under the skin that didn't go away for like 6 months. So these are things this is a common problem. This is a common problem, let's say. We addressed it, for surgical illumination and all that stuff, pockets, fine. Well, this is just another example of just an elegant solution to a problem that has such vast reach that with no good solutions, that if they don't know about it, the complications are sort of acceptable.
Right.
And so,
Right.
so that's what we really focus on identifying, certainly supporting the device that we had something to do in bringing to market, but also, when we look at new opportunities, new companies to help grow and scale, it's not just, it's another widget, right? Like we really try to do an incredible amount of diligence to confirm that this truly is an existing pain point and try to fit what narrative we would put out into the world as an extension of Accelerate Medical, right, for the benefit of FBO XYZ company.
I love it. I love it. Listen, Jay, if people, I know you have a great group of people out promoting your product. I think nationally now, but if people want to get in touch or learn more about SurgiLux, how do they do it? What do they go to your website, email you?
Yeah.
What do you want them to do?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, probably the easiest way is just for them to hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm accessible anytime. I don't sell this thing directly. I actually partner with another organization, a network of principals that sell, a complementary sort of platform, portfolio of products. But yeah, the easiest thing would be for them to reach out to me on LinkedIn, message me, or our website for SurgiLux is www.surgilux, SurgiLux.com. SurgiLux Medical. I'm sorry, SurgiLuxMedical.com, and they can go there and put an inquiry.
I'll put it on the screen. I'll put it on the screen.
We'll have it in the show notes too.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. Thanks, man. This has been awesome. I wish you nothing but the best of luck, and I hope someday we're working together. We'll figure it out.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. No, really. Thank you for the opportunity, for the platform to tell my story. It's it means a lot. I'm grateful. Thank you.
Same here. I love it. Thanks for agreeing to be on the show.
You got it.
All right. Rye, you can probably shut her down.
All right, so that was I absolutely loved that interview. I loved talking to him. I loved listening to him. Probably is a better way to say it. For me, I was fascinated by the fact that he came up with an idea like 11 years ago. You're a true entrepreneur, right? I wrote it down. I came up with an idea. I looked at it, like me and my buddies, we can't bring it to market. It's not, then seeing other people bring out products similar to it. You pointed it out, not being like dismayed by the fact that somebody beat you to market, going like, all right, I'm going to do it differently. They're doing it and increasing their price, increasing their price with the demand in the market. I'm going to go the complete opposite way. And then really finding that niche and going like, we found where this really matters. I care about this a lot. And, it was just absolutely fascinating to me to hear somebody who was so humble, yet like really brought something to market that's going to help people.
Yeah, very successful, and you can see why he's so likable and super intelligent. Thank goodness he got out of finance, right? Like think of all the patients that are going to benefit because Jay Sanchez decided to get out of finance because it was vapid, and decided, in his words, and decided to get into healthcare, design something, and 11 years later, he's letting surgeons see better in a surgical site for an affordable price that's easy. It's entrepreneurialism and helping people. And I'm so glad you enjoyed it. And he's having it made in America, which is that's very important as well. So yeah, I thought it was great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. If people want to get in touch with Jay, you can reach out to him on LinkedIn, Jay Sanchez, at Accelerate Medical, or we'll have it in the show notes. Or shoot, hit Ryan or I up on LinkedIn, and we'll connect you with Jay because we think he's such a good guy. So, Ryan, I think that was a pretty good interview.
I agree.
As you know, all bleeding stops eventually, and that applies to both surgical patients and balance sheets. So we will see you next time on Sutures and Cents.
Bye-bye, everyone.